whoever your class secretary is can be sure to get it. Also, if along those lines, if you are giving an offering this morning in Sunday school, just give it to your Sunday school secretary, the person you normally turn that into, and they'll take care of that. Just a reminder to our secretaries that you just put it back on the banister, and our Sunday school directors can pick it up from there. The other piece of information that I have this morning is that if you are in my Sunday school class, if you are in the family life class that meets here in the sanctuary, and you need a copy of the piece of paper that has Next Study's book in it, the one that we're going to start in 2 weeks, if you need a copy of that, raise your hand. Lee's got copies and can hand them out to you if you need one. Does anybody need a copy of the book that a copy of a piece of paper with the information on it from my Sunday school class about what book we're working through next? Matt Frederick is a slacker. Joyce, you're not in my Sunday school class? No. And I see the negative influence you have on Elizabeth. She had her hand up too. Joyce, behave. All right. Nobody else in my Sunday school class needs the information. All right. Okay. So with us getting started this morning, we will start off with our teacher of the day, which is Mr. Terry Childers. And Terry has 3 questions coming to him, just like each of our Sunday school teachers have. And so, Terry, first off, how long have you been worshiping at Oak Ridge Baptist Church?
Today I am 75 and 5/6. When you get old, you start counting the days and like that. And my family, my mom and dad moved here when I was 12, so whatever that math adds up to.
63 and 5/6.
5/6, yeah.
So more than 60 years. How long have you been teaching Bible studies, Sunday school classes, things like that?
Most of the years, but not all of them. There were breaks once in a while when I did not have a class, but pretty regularly, but I don't know exactly a number, but it's been a number of those 62 years, I guess.
All right. And as far as your Sunday school class, what is unique and different about your Sunday school class that sets it apart from the others?
Okay, who do I dislike? Louis, Louis is there. Al is in there. I don't know. Tom saying y'all answer that. We're weird sometimes. We go off on rabbit runs every once in a while. So I guess we laugh a lot too sometimes. So, but that's mostly it. Me. So I guess I don't think I answered that, but I don't know that.
We'll take that weird answer as the correct answer for your class. And so we're grateful to have Terry teaching us this morning for our Sunday School in the Sanctuary. Next week will be our final time of Sunday School in the Sanctuary for this year. Miss Joanne Downing will be our teacher next week. And so after that, you'll be free to go back to your regular Sunday School classes that you've been a part of. Or if you want to try a different class for a little while and see that, you're more than welcome to try that. And so I'm going to turn it over to Terry and let him get us started with Sunday School.
Good morning. There are some handouts on the ledge back there. Does anybody have a handout? Probably not yet because I hadn't said it. Right. Okay. Well. Okay. Tom, would you try to hand out those to folks? This will be kind of an outline. I didn't prepare slides because I don't have that technical skill, and so I'm still an old school mom by trade. But this will give us a good outline for this morning. As I mentioned last week and got some repercussions about, we're talking about the complaints of the ungrateful, and I made some snide comment about male or female or something. So nobody listened to me, so I didn't worry too much about anybody's thing, but somebody heard it because they brought it up. We're in Numbers chapter 11, and we're going to begin verse 4. But before that, I want us to think a little bit. Would you agree with the first sentence, the very top there? Our complaints reveal our ungratefulness about God's provision. True or false? When we complain, now we need, let's just put it out here, okay? All of us complain, right? We use whine with our cheese sometimes, right? And so, but what I want us to think about this morning is what does that really say? Not about us necessarily, but our relationship and the God that we say we serve. So that's where we're kind of going to go from. When we talk about the Israelites and their journey through the wilderness, what words come to mind as to words that would describe the children of Israel? Anybody have a thought? Pickled? Fickled, okay. Is that spelled right? If you don't know, then I'm okay. No. L. Fickle. Okay. What other words come to mind about the children of Israel in their wilderness journey? Complainers. What? All right. Forgetful. Okay. We're going to come back to that because that's going to be an important point of what we talk about this morning. They had been reminded, and they forgot real quickly. I'm sure that wouldn't apply to any of us, right? Strong, long, okay, and hard-headed. That wasn't for me, right? I mean, that was okay. Okay, so it's going to be one of those, all right? Here we go. Every class needs one. When they L-O. Other words. Forget, okay. Go ahead, let's not forget that. For all the negatives, every time they were negative, a shortcoming or a failure, what did God do? He forgave them, didn't he? It's like starting anew. That certainly would apply to anybody in here, right? So let's think about the Lord. When you think about this situation we're going to start with this passage, as you know the story, the Lord had been providing for the Israelites the whole time from the start to the finish, right? And they would complain, he would provide. They'd complain, he'd provide. So they had been getting the manna, right? Everybody know that situation and that reference. So they had regularly, daily been getting manna from the Lord. And a year later, fast forward from the time they left Egypt, going toward the promised land, a year later, what happened to them? They forgot the provisions that the Lord had made on a regular basis, right? They had ate well, but they were slaves. Now think about the first part of their history in Egypt. They had it made pretty well. They had a lot to eat, best accommodations, the best things, but they were slaves. Now, is that a good trade-off? They complained to the Lord because they were slaves. And again, they forgot the food part, right? So is that in our lives, is having provisions, is that a trade-off for the freedom and the ability to choose and to worship the God they wanted to worship? It was a trade-off, right? They had one, they didn't have the other, so they were concerned. Why do you think we struggle to find contentment with the good gifts the Lord provides us? Why do we struggle with just being thankful? More and more and more, right? Is that greed? Human nature? We're sinners? Is that enough reason To not be thankful. Read that sentence again. Why do you think we struggle to find contentment with the good gifts the Lord provides? And He does provide for us good gifts, doesn't He? I mean, think of that. I mean, Nan and I we're just about as blessed as anybody that I know. So, do we adequately be thankful to God? The next sentence, our complaining is a way of minimizing what is good about our present situation. What does it say about us? What does it say when we are ungrateful? Greedy? Again, kind of the same thought. Now let's think real quickly. What are some other unthankful characters in the Bible? Who might name one unthankful in the Bible? Sorry? Jonah. I'm sorry. I've got my hearing aids in, but they're overrated. Okay. Jonah. Who else? Ungrateful characters in the Bible. He had his on and off, didn't he? Ungrateful. I'm sorry, Matthew. Judas. Okay. Who? When you said somebody else? Oh. Anybody else? All right, let's read the passage that we're going to start with this morning. Again, chapter 4, in verse 11, chapter 11, verse 4. And I don't know if your translation has these words or not. The New International Version said, the rabble with them. Anybody else have another translation? The mixed multitude is the King James Version. Another translation I noticed was a riffraff. So these were non-Israelites who were traveling with them, right? They had left Egypt with them, and now they're called the rabble, the riffraff, or the mixed multitude. With them began to crave other food, and again the Israelites started wailing and said, If only we had meat to eat. We remember the fish we ate in Egypt at no cost, also the cucumbers, melons, leeks, onions, and garlic. But now we have lost our appetite. We never see anything but this manna. Is that a whine or not? So in the God had provided from the beginning, right? Manna every day. Even with their grumblings, they were hungry, but at least they still acknowledged God's presence and power. If you look in Exodus chapter 16, verse 3. And God willingly provided manna, enough for their needs, and even gifted them meat in the evening. If you remember, what was that? Quail. Here, however, they don't even mention God. All they're doing is complaining. And what was and who will feed us? What does that say? At no cost. See, that's really what I wanted you to think about. Provisions were there, and it didn't cost them money, but it cost them parts of their life. And they saw it as no cost. Is there a lesson for us there with our Christian life? It's at no cost financially, maybe, although I'm not trying to get Nick's sermon on giving here this morning. But it does come with a cost, doesn't it? It does come with something attached to it. It's called responsibility and commitment on our part. We're going to talk about commitment here in just a little bit. So who will feed them, which says exactly ignoring God completely. So the Lord was very angry. If you look at verse 10, Moses heard the people. In fact, let's read all of that. The manna was like The manna was, and the color thereof was the color of bdellium. Okay, I can't. The people went about and gathered it and ground it in the mills, blah, 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 blah. So verse 10, then Moses heard the people weep throughout their families, every man in the door of his lint, and the anger of the Lord was kindled greatly. Moses was also displeased. So, have you ever felt God's anger? Have you ever felt God's anger? I don't know if this is a good question or not. Would we be here if we had felt God's wrath? But that's a question, not a comment. Do we feel God's wrath, his anger? Have you ever? Have we ever? Should we ever? Is that what could we deal with God's complete anger? Tom, that would be about as far as we could be separated from God, wouldn't it? I'm trying to get out of that light. I've been in the spotlight this morning somehow or another everywhere I've been. Could we deal with that? God's total anger at me or you. Could it be at us? Okay, yeah, Joseph, I mean, we couldn't handle it, could we? I mean, it'd be so much wrath. And here's the downer or the upper, I don't know. We would deserve it, wouldn't we? It would be totally appropriate for God to spend all his anger on us individually because of who we are and what we are. So, notice that in verse 5, they remember, to David's point, they remember the fish and the food items, but they didn't remember all that God had done for them even in the past year. How quickly they forget. This lack of remembrance was what led to their grumblings and disobedience as they continued in the wilderness. Notice even the last month, the last week, they had forgotten. Now let's talk about the riffraff or the mixed multitudes or whatever word is used in your reference. To those who left with the Israelites, is it their fault? Because they evidently started the complaining. We can read maybe too much into that, maybe not. But was it their fault when they started complaining? Should the Israelites have brought them with them? Or who's at fault here? They got a big blame anyway, wouldn't they? Deserving or not, they would have got a blame for it. Now, what did Moses do? Look at Moses' reaction, and after they complained, he complained. Notice a couple of very important points. Moses heard, this is verse 10 again. Moses heard the people of every family wailing, each at the entrance of his tent. The Lord became exceedingly angry, and Moses was troubled. He asked the Lord. Notice these questions. They're on your list there. There's 4 bullets. And the last one is a couple asterisks after because this is the one I want you to think about. The 3 things that accuse God of bringing him trouble. Notice that. What have I done? Why have you brought me this trouble on your servant? So God's servants deserve no trouble? Is that going to happen? In fact, you're probably going to get a big heap sometimes, won't you, of trouble? If you're in the business or the attempt to serve our Creator, you're probably going to have some hiccups. You're going to have some different levels of trouble. Is it because of that fellowship, that servanthood that you're interested in? So the Lord, why have you brought me this trouble on your servant? Number 2, wondered had he made God so angry that God would burden him with, notice this quote, isn't this cute? All these people. Now, these were his family, right? They were his extended family, okay? But these were people that he'd had a lot of time. These are the people that he convinced ultimately to go with him to the promised land. And now he's calling them all these people. Is that not a hoot? I mean, that he's gone from liking them, caring about them, loving them, leading them, and now he's calling them all these people. I think maybe that's my weird sense of something, but I just think that phrase is a hoot. What did he do next? What did he say next? Take my life. Kill me. Notice the thing he never mentioned in this phrase. He never asked God for help. Think that's a problem? Now, I don't know about you, but I don't have a problem with that, okay? I mean, I go, anybody else? Some are grinning. That was my humor, all right? Does anybody else have trouble going to God first instead of second, third, or last? If you've got a situation you're really dealing with, really struggling with, where do you go for help? Isn't that a really good indicator of our relationship with God? Because if you're going anywhere else, friends, Phil Donahue, anywhere else, okay, to get help, Kardashians, wherever you go to get your help, doesn't that say more than we want it to? Where do we go first? Not later, not if everything else fails. Where do we go first for our counsel, our help with the problems and the issues that we're dealing with in life?
We try to fix it ourselves first. A lot of times, your first instinct is, I can do it.
Yeah, I can do it, so I'll handle it till I can't, and then we'll call God to the rescue, right? Fire engine. Joanne?
Many times we give it to him and then we take it back.
That must be you. That's not me, okay? All right? 'Cause you're exactly, I think about, and she's got a little doll named Terry, and she's sticking pins in it right now. Think about, doesn't that say everything about us? If the Israelites had been where they should have been, where would they have gone first? To God. Where did they go first? To the riffraff. Where did Moses go? Blame it on God. Why did you do this to me? I'm your servant, and just kill me. I don't know. Shouldn't a Christian, a believer, have some idea that they're not going to die till their time? So this statement, why don't you just kill me, is that trying to talk God into killing? You know? By God. So take me out. Yeah. Is the fact that he asked God to kill him, that's almost whining on steroids, isn't it? That's past whining, isn't it? That's a baby crying, get my way, or I'm gonna take my toys and go home.
Make me
But yeah, because think about how small that makes that comment, that request to kill him makes Moses. And you know, I don't know that when the going gets tough, the tough get, or whatever that expression is, does that work in God's work as well? When the going gets tough, the tough get going? Yeah, see, I got that. Does that work in God's work as well? Is the issues we deal with and going through, are these tests or are they levels of commitment? Yes, Joyce, that was a question. Okay, what, Nick, can we take her out? She just no, Joyce, it's wonderful to have you here. Okay, she's talking to Elizabeth, so she didn't hear me. Okay, both think about this relationship now with God. The last sentence on the front page: both our vertical and horizontal relationships are affected when we grumble repeatedly. Now, how often should we, let's accept the idea that believers to any level are going to complain and grumble some. Is that okay? If we let's take that as a given, okay? So the question here is, how often is repeatedly? How often is too much that we complain or whine to our Creator? Too often? Joanne, I don't know that I keep a score, but it's pretty often with me, complaining about something because something, the world didn't, if the world would just figure it out, if it would just work like I want it to, it would be perfect, okay? And lots of times that don't happen, right? So how often is repeated? How often does it, I don't know if this is a good question, or how often does it bother God that we complain to Him? Is there a limit? Is there a number? Is there how often? I don't know. Again, that's a question, not a comment. But we all do it, so how much is too much? Tom, say that again. Yeah, patience. Why did you send me these people? Is that not a cute phrase? I'm sorry. So grumbling, if it's not questioned, to Dave's point, that blaming's one thing, right? God, you did this to me. Why did you do this to me? That to me is different than, okay, God, this is not going the way we want it to or thought it would. So what might we do about it? So I think there's a big difference in that. Does God, and I don't think God ever wants us to not question Him, do we? Questioning God helps our faith, doesn't it? If we want to know, God, okay, what is this about? What does this bring into my life? What am I supposed to learn from this? Then those are good questions, aren't they? But just accepting it or not going to God to get those answers is where maybe we're wrong. Okay? Yeah. And I don't know that there are great men in this world, but I have never met one or known one that's the level, the quality of our Creator. Do you? I mean, and that's, I mean, we should do that. We need people around us, our support system. We need men who we can go to and count on and all of that. I mean, I totally and totally understand that and believe that. But ultimately, they're a man, you know. Ultimately, they're a woman. And with those limitations, they're not creator of the world. And so they're bound to have some warts with them, right? I mean, it's just yeah. And Joanne, the difference in believers and non-believers is we have that. Yeah. I mean, how much you would, it's easy.
How different was it for them because they didn't have the Holy Spirit at this point, right?
Right. They had the smoke and the fire and, yeah.
I wonder sometimes like how difficult would it have been? We have it easy compared to what they have, you know, because we do have that. We have that.
Literally at our fingertips or our
They
thought
didn't
tips.
have
Yeah.
that. And so I've been listening to the Bible year every day, and all of the laws and all of the expectations were so much. I don't. I mean, I'm very thankful to this common.
The next passage, if we fast forward just a few verses to verse 16 in this same chapter. So, question. The Israelites, Moses, God had a problem. No, God didn't have a problem. The Israelites and Moses had a problem, right? Does God always give us a solution to the problem? Does God always give us a solution to a problem? Beginning in verse 16, and the Lord said unto Moses, gather unto me 70 men of the elders of Israel, whom thou knowest to be the elders of the people, and officers over them, and bring them unto the tabernacle of the congregation, that they may stand there with thee. And I will come down and talk with thee there, and I will take of the Spirit which is upon thee, and will put it upon them, and they shall hear it not thyself alone. And say thou unto the people, sanctify yourselves against tomorrow, and ye shall eat flesh. For ye have wept in the Lord, saying, why shall give us flesh to eat? For it was well with us in Egypt. Therefore the Lord will give you flesh, and ye shall eat. Ye shall not eat 1 day, nor 2 days, nor 5 days, nor 10 days, or 20 days, but even a whole month, until it come out at your nostrils, and that be loathsome unto you, because that ye have despised the Lord which is among you, and have wept before me, saying, why came we forth out of Egypt? So what's the solution? I'm going to give you food, and I'm going to give you more food, and I'm going to give you more food, and you're going to have so much it makes you sick. What moral could we draw from this?
Be careful what you
Exactly. Be careful what you wish for or pray for. Nick?
When people answer you, can you relay that to the whole congregation so that not only people get to hear, but also the ones online?
Okay. All right. So the response was, be careful what you pray for or ask for. They got their helping, they got the food they wanted, and there was so much that it made them sick. Ever happened to you that way? Has God answered a prayer, a request, and you got it in such abundance that it turned out to be a negative for you? All right. My brother said they should have been satisfied with pinto beans. So what, we may not have wanted to share that, right? Okay, I chose the wrong time. I'm sorry, okay. The word at the top line in the second page uses the phrase heart condition. What's our heart condition? Our soul. Our heart condition is our soul. Our heart condition is the relationship we have with God. It's where our heart is. And is it either with God or not? Does it vacillate? Are we with God one time, one day, not with God another day? Or is it constant? Just think about that. Let me question here. Before God dealt with the people's complaint, he dealt with Moses. Moses' complaint was a result of exhaustion and burden of leading such a massive group of people. And remember what they were called, riffraff, mixed multitude, whatever word you want to use there, right? So God told Moses to gather 70 men from the elders to stand before the tent of meeting, and basically God distributed a portion of the Holy Spirit that he had given Moses to the 70. Wendy, back to your point. So, are these 70 now the equivalent to Moses? Should be of the same spirit, the same heart condition, if we can use that. So their hearts now, Joyce, would align with what God wanted the Israelites to do. That would be exceptional level of leadership, wouldn't it? I mean, think about that the Holy Spirit was the same in those 70 elders as it was with Moses, and it came directly from God. Now, there's a lesson for us here too, isn't there? I mean, the broader the base of this church, of God's kingdom, the stronger it'll be. If we've got a small foundation building on with the Spirit, then we're going to be weaker and could topple, couldn't we? If the base is wide and broad and deep, then it's a stronger foundation for which to build on. So I think the moral here is pretty obvious. Now, let me hurry up here. My time's getting away. About midway, I shouldn't leave that out. God then addressed the people's complaint. In his response, we are reminded that God was very angry, and we just talked about they had some meat till they were sick on it. About halfway down that page, mine has an asterisk, yours don't. But the last sentence was, it was because they had rejected the Lord, and the next sentence reads, God takes our sin seriously. Enough said there. The next part is about the omnis of God. We all know his ability, omnipotence, omniscience, and omnipresent. Now, how could we believe? If we're believers, we believe those three things, right? He's all-knowing, he's all-present, and he's totally capable of everything and anything. If we believe those three things, how in the world could we ever complain? Well, Patsy, is that out for everything? Yeah, it is, because we are human, right? I mean, that's all we got going for us, hadn't we? I mean, but think about it. We all would say we believe those three things totally, but then why would we complain? Al? That was Al saying in Psalms 139 is referenced there. Then think about that question. If we believe those three things, how could we complain? God is most glorified in us when we are most satisfied in Him. I think that's worth remembering. God is most glorified in us when we are most satisfied in Him. The fight of faith is a fight to feast on all that God is for us in Christ. When we hunger, what we hunger for most, we worship. Agree or disagree? What we hunger for most, we worship. So we hunger for God, that's who we worship. We hunger for money, for job, for position, for title, for whatever. Then that's what we worship. I think that's a pretty good thought to take home. Couple finishing, because I got 3 minutes. Our heart, our complaining doesn't just affect our own heart. It can also impact the spirits of the people around us. Downer or an upper, who would you rather be around? A positive person or a negative person? That's even more profound in church, isn't it? Ooh, I just said something about me, okay? Our hands, gratitude is most easily expressed by our actions. There's a couple thoughts down there. So if you are, does our complaining reflect our commitment? You ever heard church, they should, they shouldn't, they ought, who's they? And now, if we can take this too far, the last part down there, and I kind of added this, so it may be correct and it may not be. But we can get too far into the legalism part, can't we? You got to be here, you got to do this, you got to be this to be a good, committed Christian. But that's really not dealing with the condition of our heart, is it? Which is all that counts. The condition of our heart. I don't know if you have any questions or not, or comments, because I didn't leave you but 2 minutes to do that on purpose. Any final thought? Thank you for being a part this morning. Joanne will lead us next week, so you'll have the A teams coming next week. Okay? All right. Thank you. Got a couple minutes here before we break for worship.